Hello, everyone. It's nice to be here. It's a real privilege to be able to talk about the work that we're doing at the NMC. I don't do it alone. I work with 9 nursing and midwifery advisors from across the UK. And that's a really important part of the work that we do in terms of kind of collaborating and making sure that we are working across those 4 countries. I am an advanced nurse practitioner in general practice, so I do understand the role of advanced practice on the ground. So I'm just really going to talk you through our role as a professional regulator. This might surprise you, but we find that people often mix us up with other professional bodies. So just a little highlight of who we are and what our role and responsibilities are. The kind of journey to regulation, it's been a long one. And then talk a little bit about the review that we're doing so far, which started in 2021 in earnest. Of course, council decision in March 2024, and we're now currently in phase 2 of the review. And I'll talk a little bit about that in a bit more detail. I'll also talk about our timelines and next steps and how you can get involved, and then some of the opportunities and challenges of the work. So our regulatory role, you'll know that we regulate, so we set standards and we quality assure, and we investigate where there are concerns or a risk that standards are not going to be met. But you might not know that we also support and influence. So we produce resources and guidance to support the standards, address challenges, and we also share intelligence and support workforce development. What we don't do is regulate healthcare settings and services. We don't regulate support workers, and we don't represent or campaign on behalf of our registrants. And we also don't set safe staffing levels. So in terms of the regulation of advanced practice, I mentioned it'd been a long journey, a tortuous journey. It does say tortuous and not torturous, although we've had that debate many a time. As far back as 1997, what was the United Kingdom Central Council looked at whether additional regulation of advanced nursing practice was required. At that time, a decision was made that the current processes were enough and that public protection could be maintained through that. Right up until 2021, as I said, when Council decided to undertake this current review of the issues around public protection and whether there was a risk and whether additional regulation was required. So just looking back at the review so far, you might or might not, well, you will know that nurses and midwives, nursing associates in England are required to be on our professional register. And that includes those who are currently working in advanced practice roles. What we don't know and what we don't record, we don't identify those individuals. So we have no idea of the number of advanced practitioners who are currently working in those roles on our register. And we don't set standards for advanced practice or approve education programs, advanced practice education programs currently. So there are lots of definitions out there internationally and across the UK, but there's no standardized or agreed definition of advanced practice. We've heard throughout our discovery phase and throughout phase 1 of the variation across employment settings and educational preparation, which of course add to the risk to public protection. And of course, to mitigate some of the risks and some of the variation and inconsistency, each country in the UK has developed its own advanced practice framework. But in spite of that, we still see variation and inconsistency. And we know that within the 4 country workforce plans, there is a clear vision to grow the advanced practice workforce. And that will, of course, add to the risk as well to public protection. So I'm not going to dwell too much on what we've done so far. I mentioned the discovery phase and phase 1 of the advanced practice review. If you want to find out more about what we're doing, we've published all of the evidence from the work so far that we've done. So you can look on our website and find more information about that. So in March 2024, it seems like a lifetime ago, but it was only this year, Council made the decision to proceed with additional regulation for advanced practice for nurses and midwives, recognizing from the evidence that we presented, and that was from a thematic analysis, an independent thematic analysis of our stakeholder engagement, and also an options appraisal, that there was indeed a risk to public protection. After Council's decision, we developed a number of work streams. So work streams that we've been focusing on, which is the development of a set of principles for advanced practice, and I'll talk a bit more about that, as well as development of standards of proficiency and then associated education program standards. The third part of that work stream is ensuring that we have quality assurance processes in place, and we can come back to that, I'm sure, when we have the discussion later on. There was also a need, and Council agreed to develop a transition, or what you might know as a grandparenting process, to make sure that those currently practicing in advanced practice roles like myself and many others, and those currently studying, would be able to transition in a proportionate way into the new regulatory processes. And we also recognize that it's one thing to do an advanced practice program and be competent at the point of qualification, but there is a need to provide evidence and assurance of ongoing capability and proficiency. And so we're including advanced practice considerations in our review of revalidation and the code. Now, this slide just shows how all the work fits together. So our regulatory principles that we've currently been working on over the summer, which will take to Council in March of next year, are the foundation, or the building blocks, if you like, of the work that we're doing. And now set out high, broad level statements of what good looks like in terms of advanced practice. And then, of course, our standards of proficiency, which you'll be familiar with specifying the knowledge and skills that those working in advanced practice roles should meet. Yeah. Individuals will be able to demonstrate that they meet those standards of proficiency in the future through approved education programs that will be approved by the NMC, or through that transitional process that I was talking about. And those individuals would then be able to apply for an annotation on the public register. And it will be like the prescribing annotation that we're currently aware of. So I suppose I just wanted to highlight some of the things. Every day's a learning day, as you know, and throughout this work, there have been a number of challenges, not least because nurses, the journey to advanced practice for nursing and midwifery is very different. Advanced practice in nursing has been around for a long time, whereas the journey for midwifery is much newer. And there are more established roles in midwifery, such as the specialist midwife and the consultant midwife, than has traditionally been seen in the advanced practice space. However, our mandate is to develop these principles for both nursing and midwifery. And so it has been a challenge for us, and we've found that we've had to do a lot of education of midwives, particularly to think about the opportunities that advanced practice in midwifery might present to those professionals. And of course, you'll know that the RCM, the Royal College of Midwives, released a statement on advanced practice in midwifery, and we've been working really closely with the RCM and colleagues to progress this work. Okay. So the other thing is that, of course, nurses and midwives don't work in advanced practice roles in isolation. We work in multi-professional teams and provide care, and that includes learning and working as well. It's really clear that this isn't about medical substitution or extending beyond the individual scope of practice. And these are some of the things which add to the element of risk that we're currently seeing. We've had a lot of debate around the term of autonomy, and also does autonomy equate to advanced level practice, particularly when midwives are autonomous at the point of qualification. So we need to think about that multi-professional environment and thinking about the opportunities to utilize autonomy within the parameters set by that scope of practice. So these are just some of the challenges that we're grappling with and some of the conversations that we're having as we progress the work. So I mentioned some of the work streams. So over the summer, we've been working on work stream 1, which is the development of a public first definition. And the reason we settled on a public first definition was that we have an advanced practice public advisory group who consist of members of the public, but also representatives of charity and advocacy groups. And we shared some of the current definitions, and they pretty much threw them back at us. And said, we haven't got a clue what you're talking about. So we refined our thinking, and our public advisory group and colleagues have been working on the development of a definition which is first and foremost clear to members of the public. Now, that will form part of the set of regulatory principles, which, as I said, are broad, high-level statements. They're not capabilities, they're not mandatory, they're voluntary, and they're not competencies or proficiencies, but they do set out what good looks like for advanced practice to flourish. So we've done lots of engagement, as you would expect, and I'm constantly amazed at the level of engagement that we have around this work. Some of the themes emerging, it became clear to us that a lot of what people were talking about were essentially proficiencies and would go into the standards of proficiencies, and I've highlighted those in yellow there. But I suspect none of the other things are a surprise that were coming out of the conversations that we were having. So in terms of what our principles for advanced practice might look like, we'll be setting out the principles. They're not finalized yet, but at the moment it's looking like we're going to be setting these out under 2 headings, if you like. So expectations for individual practitioners, and then expectations for organizations and employers. So really, as I said, setting out what good looks like and ensuring that individuals working in those roles are supported in the way that they should be. And in terms of the structure, there'll be, as you would expect, with a principles document, some narratives, and some context, our public first definition, and then our principles and key statements supporting those definitions. And the things that will be included are, again, probably not a surprise: quality oversight, thinking about scope of practice, linking back to the code, experience, and this is experience from qualification rather than during training, thinking about supervision and professional development, and then practice across the 4 pillars of advanced practice. I just briefly as well wanted to touch on the transition arrangements. For me, I think this is the most complex work stream that we're dealing with, because we have to get this right. We want it to be proportionate, and we also want to recognize the huge amount of really great work that already exists in the system, whereby individuals and universities are able to credential in England, etc. So we have been working on this over the summer, and we'll begin in earnest to have some conversations with stakeholders early in the new year. We've been having conversations nationally and internationally to try and understand what lessons we can learn from others when they've introduced advanced practice. I do wish sometimes that we were in Australia or New Zealand where they started from scratch, but we are where we are, and we want to make sure that we take account and consideration of the frameworks that are in place across the 4 countries. And also organisations like the RCN, the Royal College of Emergency Medicine, and others who have frameworks and credentialing accreditation processes in place. So we are going to be undertaking a registrant survey early next year, probably towards the end of spring, and that will really help us to understand the number of advanced practitioners or number of individual nurses and midwives who consider themselves to be working at advanced practice. So it will help us understand the scale of the task that we're facing with those transitional arrangements. And as part of the work that we're doing, We need to work out what it means when individuals are not able to transition or they don't quite meet our standards as one would expect. So we're again working collaboratively to have conversations, and we will be throughout next year on what that process needs to look like. We're also factoring in, obviously, equality, diversity, and inclusion factors. And most of you will be aware that we've just published a piece of work with the Florence Nightingale Foundation, looking at the impact on internationally educated nurses and midwives. And of course, any transition process can't go on forever, so it will be time limited. But all of these things are still to come. As I said, we're at early stages, and I'll talk about timelines in a little bit more detail. So key considerations for this work, I mentioned the multi-professional aspects, multi-professional learning and working. What will programs look like? And what are our role and responsibilities as the NMC? And we do continue, as I say, there's a real opportunity for collaboration and for us to work together across the sector. We're also having to take consideration of the 4 country frameworks and workforce plans, and really trying to establish what that growth in workforce looks like across the 4 countries. And of course, some of the 4 country frameworks are multi-professional, and others are advanced practice frameworks for nursing. And of course, England has a capability framework for midwifery as well. The complexities of the current landscape, there's many organizations, as I mentioned, offering accreditation and credentialing for advanced practice, and we don't want individuals. We heard loud and clear that people have jumped through enough hoops and provided enough evidence. So we need to be able to, as I said, be proportionate and recognize that good work that's been done. We also recognize that HEIs have established advanced practice programs, and you've been through your own quality assurance processes. So part of that is recognizing that, in all honesty, they're likely to be quite close to what we're looking for in terms of our education standards. But we need to continue to work together to develop those education standards, and also to be really clear about our quality assurance processes. I mentioned nursing and midwifery at different stages. That's a real challenge for us in trying to be on the same journey together, but there are huge opportunities in that as well. Also ensuring a phased approach, so we're not doing everything at the same time. We haven't got education standards in our back pocket ready to pull out and spring on everyone. We really want to do this collaboratively. Also managing expectations. As I mentioned, and as I'm sure you're aware, there is anxiety out there. So we do try and have conversations, which you put on our website, to manage those expectations and set out what we're trying to do. And also thinking around consideration of specialisms as well. So what we're talking about is an advanced level of practice. So our approach, I'm really proud of our approach, is that we collaboratively want to engage as widely as possible. If you want to talk to me, I want to talk to you. We've developed some really innovative approaches. So we've never developed a public first definition, and we thought it was going to be quite straightforward. It's been really challenging, but really enjoyable and worthwhile as well. We want to co-produce the outputs of the review. And as I said, that means that we want to collaborate, and we want to utilize expertise and experience within the sector. So again, working collaboratively in this busy space, this busy landscape, and being open and transparent throughout. So really having those conversations, sharing the work that we're doing, and making sure that everyone has the opportunity to input into that. I just wanted to end on the Florence Nightingale Foundation report. It's a report, as I said, that we just published. It's got huge implications, not just for advanced practice, but more widely across the profession for internationally educated nurses and midwives. It really highlights that we're missing the opportunities to utilize the talent that overseas graduates can offer to the profession, to our patients, and to the workforce. There's lots of information on that slide there, but there's also the report, as I said, and there is a podcast which you can listen to where I have a conversation with Lisa, the researcher. Just to say that we are taking the recommendations forward as part of the advanced practice review. So we do continue to have regular conversations about what the work means. So just in terms of our next steps and timeline, I am running out of time. So I'm just going to pop this slide up here so that you can see the first step is taking those principles to council at the end of March. We'll begin stakeholder engagement on the standards of proficiency and education standards from probably March time after council. But that just gives you an idea that this work is not going to happen overnight. And we want to get it right. We don't want to stay on this bus for another 10 years. I've talked quite a lot about the opportunities and challenges, but there is an opportunity for us to all work together across the sector and to move and shape the future of advanced practice together. Thank you.